think I know most of you. Welcome this afternoon to First Fridays. It's the last one of the year. And but don't worry, we'll have more next year, starting in January. But this afternoon, we have a good friend of mine and someone who I used to work with and for, Dr. Laura Eells. Dr. Eells teaches in the Behavioral Science Department and teaches sociology, marriage and family, intro to sociology. Not anymore. You do? Okay. So today she's going to tell us all and share how to not get fleeced at Christmas. So join me in welcoming Dr. Eells.
When Dr. Gustafson asked me if I'd like to come back, I said, "Are you sure they want me?" I want to thank those of you. The last time I was here, we talked about long-term marrieds, and you all gave me some tips I could share with my students, and I want to thank you because they find it very interesting. And then some of them volunteer things about their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. So thank you for opening that discussion with my students. Today what I have, I put it, how to keep Feliz Navidad in the season as opposed to I got fleeced at the mall. The idea is personal safety. And I have some ideas I put together, and it's not like super slick. I did it on my home computer. Just some kind of common tips. Most of these are things we've all heard, but there are things that we often forget in our day-to-day life. And the reality is personal safety is kind of my hobby horse because we often do things that make us vulnerable. And what we want to do is reduce that window of vulnerability, because the reality is people that want to take advantage, want to take your things or my things, are looking for easy targets. And so I kind of put this together around some common areas. Things like safety at home, safety when you're out and about, safety on the internet, and then some common scams that are going around right now. And one of them is an oldie but a goodie. The congratulations, you have won the Nigerian National Sweepstakes. And you know, you'd think for as long as that one's been going around, everybody'd know about it. Well, now it's changed to the Norwegian National Sweepstakes. But for a mere $30,000 to pay the taxes, you too can have $25 million wired to your account. There is no national Norwegian sweepstakes. So, I thought I'd share this, and I'm going to hope there aren't typos in it, but if there are, keep them to yourself, please. And I tend to, this time of year, always remind myself of these types of ideas. I don't know about you, but I was raised in a very small town where people don't necessarily, lock doors. And when somebody stops you to ask the time, I sort of feel compelled to tell them. And all of those sorts of things are things that are not really wise things to do, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. But what I really want to do is a little more interaction, because we can all kind of read the brochure. But we'll use it maybe as a jump-off point, and I'd like to know other tips you have that we can share with each other, because I found everybody has ideas, and everybody has ideas that maybe somebody else hasn't thought about. Safety around our home. It's our house. It's where we live. We feel comfortable and safe. I hope we do. We should. It's our home. But one of the things that we sometimes do, there are two things that we often do, one of which is advertise that we're alone by putting just our name on a mailbox. Okay. Well, okay. Then if I'm looking to burglarize someplace, I just look for the places that have one name on a mailbox, and then I watch for that one person to leave. I now know it's fair game to go in there. So let's not just put a single name on a mailbox If we had to put anything on it, let's just put a last name. Okay? Don't put a single name on a telephone answering machine. Hi, this is Laura. I'm not in right now. Okay. What's really bad is if you are there and you're screening calls and they think you're not home. She said she wasn't home, darn it. And what's she doing here? Okay? So no first name, just putting one name on an answering machine, even if there is only you, be your own best friend. We are not home now. Okay? Or we can't come to the phone right now. Who's we? Me, myself, and I. We're not sure which one of us is going to answer today. Another way we can promote, as if there are multiple people in the house, is make sure we leave lights in various zones of our house rather than just the room we're in. It creates that idea that there are people there. Have music in a room where you're not, something that creates a sense that there could be more than one person in that house. And while we don't want anything to happen, if we have reason to think something's wrong, if we have a phone and emergency numbers handy, we don't have to go find what's given us that uh-oh feeling. And I like that word, the uh-oh feeling, that sense that something isn't right. Little kids can tell you how they feel when they think something's wrong, and that's what they say. I have this uh-oh feeling in my tummy. As adults, we've learned to suppress that feeling. Oh, no, I can't. I could be wrong, I could embarrass myself. And I say when you got that uh-oh feeling something's wrong, trust it. It's better to be embarrassed because nothing was wrong than to walk head on into a burglar. So, if you got the uh-oh feeling, act. If you got a phone by the bed, you can call for help. If you got to walk all the way to the kitchen for the phone, you're going to run into Bob the burglar. Excuse me, I was just making me a sandwich before I take your telephone or your television. So if you have that handy, you've got another tool to keep you safe. Another thing is keeping entrances around your house and around your windows clear so that you can see around them and that people can't hide around them. Bushes should never be higher than your windowsill so that you can see. If you have a peephole in your door, make sure it's low enough that you can see in it and that you can at least see 180. Now, that's a problem at my house because my husband's 6'1" and he usually puts them in. And I'm jumping. I'm going to get it one of these times, So I got a stool by the door. Hello? Okay. So put it at a height for everybody, not just the person putting it in. I'm going to ask you this. What is a stranger? What's a stranger?
Someone you don't know.
That's right, somebody you don't know. And the reason I say that is there are people we let into our house that are strangers that we don't define as strangers. And that's because they're wearing uniforms. They might have on a uniform for the gas company, BPU, a company that fixes something, and they're at your door and you just open it up and you let them in. Now, if you call them, that makes sense. But if you haven't called them and they say they're from BPU and they need to check something, don't open the door. Go to the phone and call BPU and say, this is where I'm at, and did you send somebody to my area? Because if it is BPU, they'll tell you sure. But it's rare they send someone without prior information. And anybody can get the uniform or can make a passable uniform. Okay? But we tend to forget that those people are strangers or a police uniform because we've learned to trust them. I do this with my students in that my husband's in law enforcement, and so we show them how easily you can put together a police uniform to look legitimate using online buying sites. And so those red lights in the middle of the night, if you know you haven't done anything wrong, put on your flashers, reduce your speed to 20 miles an hour, and go to the nearest lit populated area. If it is truly a police officer, he'll understand what you're doing, And if it isn't a police officer, expect him to speed away. Okay? But we're so used to being conditioned that, oh, that's a police officer, we stop. And so that's a stranger. We need to be careful with strangers in our home. And I'm as bad as anybody else. Oh, it's just the UPS guy. That's not our UPS guy. Oh, it's got to be. And my husband was out the door saying, can I see your identity? And then we found out we had a new UPS guy who's really nice because he told us how to change things so we can just leave things and we don't have to keep waiting for him the next day. Sometime between 2 and 5. Don't go to the bathroom. That could be when he comes. I don't know about you, that's a little bit difficult for me. 2 to 5, I can't pee. Okay? So now I can get him to just leave it for him. Okay? Now, most of us are pretty good at home, but what about if we're out and about? What areas of concern do you have when you're out and about in public? Whether you're in your car, at a store, at the mall. What kinds of things do you see that could be difficult?
If I'm out at night somewhere and get in my car, I lock it immediately before I turn the switch to get it to lock.
Very good. And hopefully you've looked under, around, and in the back seat before you got in. So those are critical. I used to do a lot of safety programs when I worked at a crisis center, and I'd have everybody, we're going to get in the car, lock the door, put on our seatbelt. But I would say, before you get in the car, look in the back seat. And then I'd watch people leave, and they'd look under their car, they'd look around their car, they'd sit down in their car, lock the door, put on their seatbelt, and then go, a little late. Just a little late. All you did with that seatbelt is give them a way to restrain you. So you want to check that out. Very good. What's another out and about that you do to promote safety? Come on. I know you guys do stuff.
Stay in lighted places.
Okay. Stay in lighted places. Park where it's well lit. Because it may be bright out when you parked. It might not be that bright out when you leave.
Take out your keys before you go out in the store.
Excellent. Have your keys out before you leave the store, because in the time it takes you to dig around for them and get your ignition key, you've reduced your window of vulnerability because you're focused on your key, not who is around you. Put it between your fingers. My own feeling is I don't want to have to fight with anybody. I don't want to have a weapon. You can thread it through your fingers as a weapon. I want to keep people more than arm distance away so I don't have to. But you can do that with it. Know where you're parked. And my husband would laugh if he were here. Because I'm one of those people that's doing this out in the parking lot. As I walk down the lanes, I'll find it. Because I don't remember where I park. But even if you got to write down row H, okay, halfway down on something. And I do that when I'm in Wichita or if I'm in Chicago. But when I'm here in town, I'm wandering all over Walmart's parking lot with my keys out, trying to find the one that lights up. Okay, I just can't remember where I parked. That's poor safety because I'm so busy looking for the taillights that are coming on, I don't know who's around me. Another thing is don't carry a whole lot of stuff. Don't have your hands full. If your hands are full, even if you could use your key as a weapon, you couldn't get to it. If you have more than you can carry in one hand, ask for help. Every store will provide somebody to carry your stuff out. If you bought that much stuff, they want to make you happy. Okay. I know that there are a number of walkers in here because I admire you from a distance while I'm sitting down. I admire your gumption. I'm not getting up to join you, but I admire you. When we walk, we It's preferable not to walk alone. It's preferable somebody knows when you've left. Not that that's going to prevent anything, but at least we have a starting point. Walk close to the curb, walk with traffic, and do not walk with headphones on. And I know a lot of people like to listen to music, listen to books, listen to NPR or whatever, but when you have the earbuds in or headphones on, you don't hear what's going on behind you or what's right beside you. And you're really at risk. So if you really have to listen, only use one. Listen in one ear. And have one ear that can be tuned into the environment. And that can help.
Walk close to the curb.
Close to the curb maximizes your field of movement. On the other hand, if there's a lot of cars, move over. Or if a car seems to slow down toward you, move over. But if I'm over here, that gives me the range of both the street and I can move to the sidewalk. But the street may be my best exit if I feel threatened. I now have the ability to cross the street. I may lose that over here. Okay? Now, who has something in their, who carries anything in their wallet or purse they can't afford to lose? Come on. I'm not going to ask you what it is. Okay? A question. Why are you carrying it? Okay? The reality is, anything you take outside of your home, you have a significant risk of loss. So if it's truly precious to you, leave it home. I can speak to this one because I once had my purse was sitting in a drawer in my desk, and I went to the bathroom, and it was not at McPherson, it's at a different college. I came back, opened my desk drawer, and I noticed my purse was laying on the floor. I opened my purse, and my wallet was gone. I was heartsick. One of my colleagues went to the women's room, one went to the men's room, and they came back with my wallet, hooray. And my credit cards were in it. But what was missing was something that whoever took it probably thought they had credit cards because it was a credit card holder. But in that, I had the last picture of my grandfather, the last time he was ever able to be outdoors. I had the first picture of my niece, the first step she ever took. In other words, I had irreplaceable items in that thing that I carried with me because it made me feel at home. I could look at people I truly loved, and they were gone. They were gone forever. And I was just crushed. And I kept asking myself, why in the devil did I carry that? I carried it because I assumed everybody would have my values, that you don't take other people's things. You know, I'd have been much happier if they'd have taken my credit cards. I could stop those. I couldn't recreate the pictures. Well, eventually enough family members found out about it, and we recovered all but one picture. Somebody had a picture and made a copy of a picture. And it took about a year, and I got the most important ones, my grandfather and my niece, but there are a couple I didn't. And that's when I learned the lesson: you never carry anything you can't afford to lose. It does two things. You don't lose precious items, and it also means that if somebody says, I want that, you don't mind letting them have it. You're not going to fight to get it back because there's nothing that valuable in it. If you have precious items, your first instinct is to take it back, and you push and you pull and you yank and you tear, and chances are you lose. Rather, what we want to do is what's called the give and go. Okay? You want my wallet? You can have it. There you go. And I'm going to throw it one way, because that's what they want. They don't want me. and I'm going the other direction as fast as I can. And while they're retrieving what they wanted, I'm somewhere else. Okay? But if I got something that's desperately important, I'm not going to want to throw it over there. I'm going to want to try and keep it. By golly, it's mine. Okay? And I'm going to go back here for those of us who are female in the group. Now, Carlene is very good about not doing this. Can I borrow yours for a moment, Carlene? Notice Carlene's neat and tidy little bag. This is what we should be carrying. This is a safe and secure. This is mine. Okay? Because I seem to think I have to be ready for every contingent possible. Okay? You need a needle and thread? I got one. Don't know how to sew, but I got one. Okay? Heck, I bet it's in this pocket. I better not take it out. I even have a Band-Aid in my pocket just in case. Okay? So I'm prepared. Carlene's got it down to the essentials. When we go out in a crowd, something like this, especially with this long strap, this one is so easy to take from me. Now, I can make it a little bit better if I do this with it. But if I'm going to go into Wichita with this, I'm going to have it this way, and I'm going to hold it right here with my hand, because my zipper is here. But all this really takes is somebody with an inline skate to whiz back past me with a blade, cut this strap, my purse falls, and before I pick it up, somebody else on skates has it, and they're past me in the mall. Which is why if I'm going to carry everything but the kitchen sink, I don't have anything valuable. Because I'm not chasing. So something like Carlene's is better. I carry something like this when I travel, which I can just put essentials in. I have several of these of various sizes that are like for a day trip. When I go overseas, I always have a really small that I put my passport in if I need to, some money in, etc. I usually carry money on my person, not in a bag. And I don't carry a credit card unless I know I'm going to need one for something in particular, or I know I want to buy an item with a credit card so that I'm going to have an easier time exchanging it if it's wrong. If I've got to carry a really bigger bag because I like my stuff with me, something that has a flap that fastens is better. What would make this even better would be if it had a zipper across the whole thing, so it takes two things to get into it. And then it has internal pockets all over it, so you have several places you can hide things. So that when people see you get in it to dig for those car keys, they can't see what all you have in your purse. Okay? Now, for you fellas, you're probably not carrying purses, but people will look at the size of your wallet through your pants, and if it looks really thick, because it may be lots of grandkids, it may be loaded with cash, they don't know, but it makes it an interesting item to take away from you. So look at how thick it is and remove some of those things. My son just bought a new car for him. Carlene?
Well, before we leave purses, that's a big one for me. I usually have one smaller than that, and if it's winter, I always try to wear it under my coat.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good one, to put it under your coat. Okay? But my bottom line is if somebody really wants my purse, they can have it. Just take it. Just leave me alone, have it. Okay? Because anything that's really important isn't in there. Because one of the things I've done with my bank and my credit cards is they're all registered online. I make one call, everything stops. So they're not valuable in terms of somebody using them. I can get them stopped so nobody can use them quickly. And I know I'm not responsible if somebody uses them before I make that call. So I don't define them as valuable in that sense. I can stop it. Valuable are the things I can't replace. Okay. My son recently and his wife bought their first new car. They were really excited, and it's a hatchback. There's a problem with the hatchback. There is no trunk. And I looked in their car the other day, and I saw all sorts of fun things to take. How many of you like the internet? I do. Likes the internet. Spend some time on it. It's a great place. It is also the source of security concerns. And we've heard recently of places like Target and Home Depot losing private customer information, have we not? So we need to learn to exercise some good control with the internet. One of the things we don't want to do is give unsolicited people private information about who we are. I almost came this close to falling into this trap because a very good friend sent me something on Facebook. And I even in a separate message contacted and said, "Is this for real?" to her. And she said, "Yeah, it's just fantastic." Okay? So I start filling out, I click on the link and it's to get a prize of some sort, and I start down this rabbit hole. And all of a sudden, they want very personal information, things like date of birth, place born, all the kind of information that would allow your identity to get stolen. And I clicked out of it. And I didn't messenger this time. I called her and I said, "Did you actually do this?" "Well, sure. And I'm going to get this lovely casserole bowl." And I went, "I think you better start a sniffer trace for identity theft." And I wouldn't hold my breath about the casserole bowl. "Why not?" "Because you just gave them everything they need to steal your identity." "Oh. They didn't ask my social security number. They don't need that to steal your identity." So even things that seem pretty simple, if you're not really careful, you're gone. At everything they needed to get a birth certificate to eventually get to my social security number. Okay? So all those little prizes and things, be careful with those. If you have to write down passwords, and I do too, don't keep them near the computer, okay? Because there's no point in having a password if you're just going to hand it to anybody, which is what you're doing when it's right beside the computer. Keep them well secured. And while you're at it, remember, password is not a good password. And 1, 2, 3, 4 is not a good password. Okay? We had a former FBI analyst on campus a couple of years ago who did a lot of internet crime. And he said basically you kind of only need 2 passwords, but you need 2 lines and 2 computers. And he says you have one computer that you only do banking information on with 1 password that never gets used anywhere else. And then you have 1 computer for everything else. And as long as those 2 lines never cross, all of your banking material is safe. It's when you intermix those transactions that people can get access to banking information and all of your other information. I don't know about you, I'm a little lazy. I'm not going to do that. But I'm sure going to make sure that I don't let my passwords be something easy or located somewhere simple. I've considered it a form of life security. Since all of our bills are online, but you have to do some execution on them, my husband doesn't know any of them. He has to keep me alive, and he has to stay married to me, or he'll be in trouble. Okay? He doesn't know the passwords, he doesn't know where they are, and he doesn't know when things come due. So, as long as I'm alive, the bills get paid. As long as we stay married, the bills get paid. I have job security at home. Okay? When you're married to a cop, you have to think like one. Okay? And basically here we're talking about vigilance online. We don't order anything unless we see that little lock at the top that tells us it's secure. We don't order things from sites we've never heard of unless we investigate them. We make sure we don't give out information. Places like the IRS do not call you and ask you for information, so we never give it to them. The bank may call to ask you something, but they're not going to ask you account information. They're going to ask you to do something. They may ask you to come down, but they're not going to call and say, oh, we had a problem with your account. Can you give us your password? They are not going to do that. And so vigilance really does work. Another thing, would you like to know how Target and Home Depot both got their numbers taken? There's one really simple way it was done. Someone who worked there put a very tiny microchip in at least 3 at Target and probably 8 at Home Depot in the card swipe. And every time a customer swiped, it kept track of the number. That same person who worked there, when they went out for the end of the day, bought a purchase at every one of those aisles. And when they swiped their card, they took the little microchip out. That microchip then went overseas with everybody's number. I have made it a habit of refusing to swipe my card and make them hand enter the number. Every once in a while, I will find some place that will not do that, and I tell them that's fine. There are other merchants that I can shop with and go somewhere else. But I'm refusing to swipe anymore because that is so easy. Debit cards can have the same kind of thing happen to them. And it is so small you'll never feel it when you swipe your card. It's a strong enough magnet, it has to have a certain kind of card to pull it off. I'm not going to do it anymore. And yeah, there are some places I don't shop anymore, but that's life. Okay? And another thing, never throw a voided check, bank deposit, those credit card inquiries. I don't know if you get them, but I'm inundated with people who think I want more credit cards. I don't know about you, I was raised to pay for things with cash. Now, I use them if I'm ordering something online, but I don't use them. I don't need any more. We talk about how much debt people are in now. Why do we keep sending people more? But don't throw those things in the trash, because enterprising young criminals take them out and will take credit out in your name. Those things all need to be shredded or stamped so they can't be read. Simple things, and I know it seems odd to think somebody be digging through your trash, but people do. Okay? Questions, comments, other things people do, because I'm sure you've got other things you do. I can tell you one place that it doesn't seem at all hard to get information from is the Veterans Affairs. When my dad had cancer, I didn't have to prove I was his child, I just said I was. And because they had his World War II ID number, they told me everything I needed to know. I could have changed where his veterans' money was being deposited if I wanted to. I was really concerned about that. So if anyone in here is a veteran, keep that in mind. Keep all your veterans' information well placed, well secured.
I'm just always surprised, even at Dillon's, how many people shop and leave their cart with their purse wide open. Or go to a ball game and leave their purse on the floor or on the bench wide open. I just think that's a perfect opportunity.
It sure is.
Surprised at that.
And that's it. Our window of vulnerability gets wide open because we do things we don't think about. You know, if you sat and thought about it, you realize it wasn't smart, but at the time you just hadn't given it any thought. And that's where our window opens up. We'd bought a house, and we were in the house we were in, we had another week, so we were living in it, so we thought we'll paint and we'll do all of those things. And then we'll move, because we had a whole week between the two, and it seemed better to paint, shampoo carpets and those things while it was empty. Well, we left the windows open because there's nothing in it. It's a small town. What's going to happen in Valley Center? Well, nothing then, but some enterprising criminals came in when those windows were open and unlocked the side garage door, put the screen back in and left that way. And then after we moved everything in, and everything was locked up, they used that side door to gain entry into the house. And a neighbor called me when I was doing a program like this and said, "You have people moving your stuff out of your house, and the police won't go in because I can't authorize it, I'm only your neighbor? You ought to, if they're not authorized to take your stuff, you better call the police." And I called the police and said, "Nobody's supposed to be taking stuff out of our house." And they caught the guys, and they had 2 moving vans ready to take stuff out of our house. They'd pulled one into the garage with the door shut, and they had another one ready to go when that one was done. So they were pre-planning a robbery when the house was open and available. And fortunately, our neighbor caught it. And did we know better? Yes. Were we thinking? No. Okay, my favorite scams. I will tell you my latest scam story.
I have one too.
Okay, we'll start with yours.
Our granddaughter called, I thought, and said she was in jail and she needed money, and she was in Canada and she had an accident, all this. So I sent the money.
Okay. And where was your granddaughter? Not in Canada.
I said, well, can I call your dad and have him help you? No, I don't want my dad to know about it.
This is the latest hot scam.
And our son then said, Mom, call me next time.
Trust me, many people have fallen for that one. Aunts, uncles, but mostly grandparents and great-grandparents. You get a call, it's usually...
How did they get my name? How did they know I was a grandmother?
They didn't. They were playing the odds.
She didn't give me her name. She just said grandma.
And sometimes it'll start with somebody who sounds very brusque, and it's Officer so-and-so. I have your granddaughter in custody, and if you don't bail her out tonight, da-da-da-da-da, and I'll give you 30 seconds with your grandchild. And then this weeping child comes on the phone, male or female. "Grandma, it's me. Grandma, I need your help. If you don't do this, I have to stay in jail all weekend."
Bad cold, she was sick.
All of these things are, "Grandma, they're really bad people here, and I'm really frightened, and I don't have any money, and if I call Dad, I'll just be in so much trouble. Grandma, can't you help me, please? Grandma, I only need $500 or $1,000 or $30,000, whatever it is they think you'll do." And you send the money, and you have to have it right away so you don't have time to think, and that's one of them that's on here. This scam is hitting across the country, and no, they didn't even know that you were a grandma. They didn't even know who you were. They randomly called a number, they heard your voice, and decided, we'll try it. Now,
I got a couple calls back on that, and the third call I got, by that time I'd been to the police with it.
yeah, well, you paid once, maybe you'll pay twice. And this one is just blanketing the nation with the idea that as grandparents we care and we'll do things, and they make it sound so urgent and so desperate.
Well, how are you supposed to get the money to her?
Oh, they'll have you go down and wire it with Western Union or go buy a prepaid Visa card. And you send it, and as soon as they've got it, the number gets disconnected if you were sending it by way of a phone, and it's over and done with. And this scam, I even in fact put it on here because it's such a common scam right now, and most of us panic if we think a family member is in desperate trouble, and for a mere $500 we could help them. Our caring kicks in, and we do this. And if we found one person, we'll find others in the area, and the next one's 1,000, and the next one's 1,500, and we go up as far as we can. And there have been some that have been as much as $30,000 or $40,000.
So you ask, what is my granddaughter's name?
Right.
Where is she from? What kind of...
Actually, I would probably just hang up before they started. If my grandchild were really in trouble, my grandkid would call their parents, and if they weren't, too bad. I actually had a student call once wanting bailed out of jail, and I just told the police, I'm sorry, I don't bail students out of jail. Tell her to call her parents. And I could actually hear her in the background, oh, Dr. Eells, she'll get me out. No, I won't. Tell her to call her parents.
It's been maybe over a year ago, I got an email that was supposedly from Herb and Jean Smith, and they were in some foreign country, and they lost their money, and they lost everything and all that. And I knew that was not real, because I knew they weren't in a foreign country.
You know, and so just kind of have to be really careful, but this grandparent one is really, really concerning because it hits us all in our heart. And oftentimes our grandchildren aren't where we can get immediate contact, and so we just rush into it. The other one is the fake exterminator, painter, roofer, siding specialist, who is in your neighborhood and can cut you a great deal if you do it today. If you just give me half the money today, I'll be back tomorrow, and you'll never see the siding or whatever it was. And this one is where I'll end, and then we'll see if anybody has something they wanted to add. A couple of weeks ago, now my dogs don't bark at the mailman. They don't bark at UPS, but they barked at some guy, and so I go to the door and, hi, I'm here to measure for your siding. He had clipboard and shirt with the company name on it and tape measure and all of this. And I went, what? Yeah, I'm here to measure for your siding. Your husband set this up. Okay. Now my husband's name is Michael. I said, so let me get this straight. My husband, William, asked you to measure our house for siding. Yes, ma'am, he did, and we set it up for today. And you're telling me William only asked siding and not windows? Oh, I forgot the windows. Yes, he did. He wanted siding and windows. William was very specific about the windows. I'm just super confused now. Because he talked to you about, William said he wanted sidings and windows, and he said nothing about the doors. No, William didn't say a word about the doors. But I can add those in if you'll just authorize the form, because you really could use new doors. I am just befuddled beyond all befuddlement. He goes, what don't you understand? My husband's name is Michael, and why would somebody named William give you permission to put siding and windows and doors in my house? Would you get off my porch before I call the police? This man never talked to my husband. My husband never would have authorized sidings and windows and doors or anything. He would have said, talk to my wife. I don't do this stuff. I put bad people in jail. That's my job. And so when I gave him a name, he just kept repeating it and digging himself deeper and deeper and deeper. But I'm very sure at the end of that, if I'd have let that carry on, he would have wanted a check for half the cost of siding, windows, and doors. Now, if I'm not used to dealing and knowing about scam artists and being safe, I just might have ended up writing a check for thousands of dollars to somebody I would never have seen again, under the assumption that my husband, who was not home, had authorized it. I am not saying we cannot trust anybody in the world, but a degree of skepticism is healthy for us. But on that note, I want to say I hope we all have a really great Christmas, that we don't get fleeced at the mall, and that we all have a great, great Christmas. Okay? I hope this was fun and helpful. Yes?
I have not been scammed since yesterday.
Well, that's good. I think I was scammed by a student today on his grade, but
To Walmart, did my shopping, ran the card through, and they didn't accept my card. And I said, well, I want to go to another cashier. I just knew my card was good. So we went to another cashier, and they said, the card's not good. Well, I put my groceries up and came home. Well, and then we made telephone calls, and they found out immediately why the card was
denied.
canceled, and they renewed it. But yesterday was not a nice day.
no, it's not. It's not. I had some things happen not too different from that at Kohl's, but it was a case where I had used one of their 20% off and used my credit card, and then I paid it off, and when it went through at a different amount. So I called the store, and they had no record of it, and I read the number it had been applied to, and it wasn't my account, and come to find out, the person at their credit desk had applied my check to her own account, which was over the limit, instead of paying to pay off my bill, because I don't run a balance, but at the time I was like, well, I'll take the 20% off and then I'll pay it off the next time when the bill comes. And she'd used my money to pay her account. So I wasn't having a very good day that day either.
Backing up a little bit, you said earlier that you thought it was better to have them read your card rather than swipe it. Is that because you don't trust the swiping? Or?
That's because I, especially at the holiday time, I'm concerned that there could be a card reader in the swipe machine that no one would know is there. Because most of these major dumps that we have found have involved a card reader in the swipe zone. And most of the people, there's usually one bad apple in a store that's doing it. It isn't the store. It isn't a grand scheme by employees. It's one. And it worries me that that can happen, because once it's in there, it's not only reading your store, it's reading every other store that's hooked into the system, because it's reading every swipe that takes place everywhere. And I've just decided, I know I'm sounding old and foolish, but I'm not swiping my card anymore. I'm just not. Until they can guarantee me that can't happen, and we can't. Now, we're moving in that direction with a new microchip that's going to be coming out in all of our credit cards, our debit cards, et cetera, the European system that we have avoided for years because it's more costly for credit card companies and for the folks that take credit cards or debit cards. It's a much more sophisticated technology.
So if they put the numbers in, there's no way that chip can still get the numbers?
No.
And it's just right on that machine, so you could put it in yourself?
Not on the machine, on the cash register.
No, it's on the cash register, and it doesn't take very long for them to do it. It doesn't take a lot of your time. They can put them in really quickly.
And my reading of the technology may be faulty, but that's what I have read and what I think is probably going on. And so my decision has been, you either hand enter my card or I take my business somewhere else.
How safe is this with Walmart when they do copies of our checks?
Those are perfectly safe. Those are extraordinarily, I'd much prefer that than using a debit card.
What about at the restaurant where you use your credit card for the waitress to take back?
I never do. And that is not saying that I don't trust people. It's just we do know that there are times where credit cards get scammed that way. I'm leery, but you have to do it at a hotel or motel. I don't like doing it, but you don't have any choice. My husband had his credit card stolen, his state credit card, and he's a fraud investigator in Topeka at a hotel. Got a call one night saying, just wanting to verify that he really wanted to buy 5 first-class tickets from the United Arab Emirates. And he's like, no, well, they're at the gate right now. He goes, I don't know anybody there. And his card impression had been taken, and it had been used to buy these 5 tickets from a motel in Topeka. 2 agents stayed there, and both of them had their card taken and used there. So I don't do it at restaurants, neither does my husband. We pay cash. And it's not, I want to make it perfectly clear, it's not that I don't trust people. I think in general people are very honest. But out of the whole group of people, there can be a bad apple. Why? I don't see why I want to risk it for myself. I'd rather feel comfortable and have a good time when I go out and not worry when my card disappears back somewhere else to ring it up.
We buy gift cards and use those because you give them and there's no way that...
There's nothing you can do with that. And so those are fine. But I really do want to enforce, I think we can go about our life safely and happily and trust people. We need to be aware and reduce our window of vulnerability so that we can go about our life safely and happily and trusting. It's when we just don't exercise common sense and put in place some good safety precautions that we can't, and then we have those episodes that we don't like. And one of the things is keeping an eye on your bank account and any credit cards you have, and look for periodically for things that shouldn't be there, because that's how you stop. If somebody's trying to get your identity or trying to steal something from you, the first thing they'll do are put some very small purchases on to see if you notice. And if you watch them, you pick up on that $25 purchase and say, whoa, I didn't do that. Did you do that? No. Well, then I guess we better call the company. But if you don't notice the 25, the next one's going to be to your limit of your card. Well, I want to thank you. I hope you all have a good Christmas, and it's been my pleasure this afternoon. I hope it was a good use of your time as well. Have a good Christmas.